अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स, वेलकम टू माय चैनल। आज की इस वीडियो में हम रिवाइज़ करेंगे पंजाब रेवेन्यू अथॉरिटी में इन्फोर्समेंट ऑफिसर और ऑडिट ऑफिसर के पेपर के लिए 100 मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट और एक्सपेक्टेड पंजाब सेल्स टैक्स एक्ट के एमसीक्यूज़, और उसके साथ ही हम अकाउंटिंग के 100 मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट जो वन लाइनर्स हैं या एमसीक्यूज़ कह लें, उनको रिवाइज़ करेंगे। सो आज की इस रिवीजन को स्टार्ट करने से पहले आप लोगों में से जिन स्टूडेंट्स को भी पंजाब रेवेन्यू अथॉरिटी में इन्फोर्समेंट ऑफिसर के लिए, ऑडिट ऑफिसर के लिए या म्यूनसिपल ऑफिसर फाइनेंस के लिए सिलेबस के अकॉर्डिंग कंप्लीट नोट्स चाहिए हों, जिसमें तमाम सब्जेक्ट्स के वन लाइनर्स मौजूद हों, तो उसके लिए आपको व्हाट्सएप नंबर स्क्रीन पर शो हो रहा है, उस पर कांटेक्ट करके आप सैम्पल रिक्वेस्ट कर सकते हैं। व्हाट्सएप पर ही सर आपको सैम्पल के साथ साथ पेमेंट डिटेल्स वगैरह भी प्रोवाइड कर देंगे। अभी ये नोट्स आपको काफ़ी डिस्काउंट पर मिल जाएंगे, और जितना टाइम अभी आप लोगों के पास अवेलेबल है उसमें अगर आप लोग चाहें फुल कंसंट्रेशन के साथ अगर आप प्रॉपर टाइम को एलोकेट करें तो इन तमाम नोट्स को प्रिपेयर करके आप इजीली 65 से 70 मार्क्स जो है वो ले सकते हैं। स्टार्ट करते हैं आज की रिवीजन को। पहले हम एक्ट के जो एमसीक्यूज़ हैं उनको रिवाइज़ करते हैं और उसके बाद अकाउंटिंग के मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट एमसीक्यूज़ को रिवाइज़ करेंगे। पंजाब सेल्स टैक्स एक्ट एमसीक्यूज़। First one, the Punjab Sales Tax on Services Act was officially enacted by the Provincial Assembly of Punjab in the year 2012. The primary operational body responsible for the collection, administration and enforcement of taxes under this act is the Punjab Revenue Authority. The comprehensive classification, statutory descriptions and tariff codes of taxable services are listed in the second schedule. Services that are explicitly exempted from the levy of sales tax are designated under the third schedule. The specific individual or legal entity that provides a taxable service or is legally required to deposit tax is defined as the registered person. An economic activity or systematic continuous exercise involving the provision of services to others for consideration is an economic activity. The definitive monetary consideration, including all federal or provincial duties, excluding sales tax itself, paid for a service, is the value of service. Any economic service that is initiated, executed or consumed within the territorial boundaries of Punjab is classified as a service provided in the province. The unique financial document that must be issued by a service provider to a client to officially record a tax transaction is the tax invoice. The accounting time frame spanning exactly one calendar month for which a tax return must be complied and filed is the tax period. The fundamental charging section that establishes the legal liability, scope and territorial framework for the sales tax is Section 3. The specific statutory rate of sales tax applied by default to standard taxable services, unless a lower reduced rate is mentioned, is 16%. If a service provider offers a mix of different distinct taxable services, tax must be calculated and charged separately for each service according to its tariff code. Under the strict rules of Act, the tax on a service becomes legally due and payable at the exact moment the service is provided, rendered or invoiced, whichever occurs first. If a service initiated outside Pakistan but ultimately consumed or utilized within Punjab, the transaction is fully taxable within Punjab. The specific mechanism where the statutory obligation to deposit tax shifts from the service provider to the service buyer is the reverse change mechanism. In a reverse charge scenario involving an unregistered or foreign service provider, The primary legal person liable to pay the tax is service recipient. The regulatory authority to amend, add, or delete items and tariff categories within the second schedule rests exclusively with the Provincial Assembly of Punjab. The specific statutory section that grants the provincial government the legal authority to issue tax exemption notifications is Section 12. Any tax exemption notification issued under Section 12 can be applied prospectively from the date of publication, never retroactively. The statutory section that outlines the mandatory requirements and criteria for registration under the Act is Section 25. Every person providing a taxable service in Punjab whose turnover exceeds the prescribed threshold must apply for registration within 30 days for becoming liable. If an eligible entity fails to register voluntarily, the PRA holds the explicit legal authority to execute a compulsory registration under Section 26. Prior to executing a compulsory registration under Section 26, the PRA must give the business entity a mandatory written notice of 15 days. A registered person who completely ceases their economic operations or stops providing taxable services must apply for deregistration under Section 29. If a registered person intends to close a specific branch or business location while maintaining others, they must apply for a change in registration particulars. Any material change in a business core registration data, for example address, directors, must be reported to the PRA within 14 days of the change. Voluntary registration by a small scale service provider who is otherwise below the statutory threshold limits is fully permitted under Section 25. The unique identification number assigned by the PRA system to an individual or corporate entity upon successful registration is the PNTN Punjab National Tax Number. The legal framework allows the PRA to suspend a registration immediately if they discover the taxpayer is engaged in systematic fraud or non-filing. The total amount of sales tax legally charged by a registered service provider to their clients during a tax period is the output tax. The provincial or federal sales tax paid by a registered person on goods or services consumed as business inputs is the input tax. The default statutory time frame within which a registered person must claim an input tax adjustment against output tax is 4 months from the invoice date. Input tax paid on goods or services that are utilized exclusively for providing completely exempt services is strictly non-adjustable and non-refundable. If an entity uses input goods or services to provide both taxable and exempt services simultaneously, they must follow apportionment of input tax rules. Under the apportionment rules, the allowable input tax credit is calculated proportionally based on the ratio of taxable turnover to total turnover. Input tax paid on luxury passenger vehicles, corporate entertainment, or personal consumer items is explicitly classified as inadmissible or blocked input tax. To claim a valid input tax adjustment, the taxpayer must possess a authentic tax invoice containing the registration numbers of both the supplier and the buyer. The operational adjustments required when the value of a service or the tax amount changes after invoicing are executed via debit and credit notes. A credit note is typically issued by a service provider to adjust the tax liability downward when a service transaction is completely cancelled or value is reduced. The statutory section that mandates the specific types of records and accounts a registered person must maintain is Section 31. Registered persons are legally required to preserve all their transaction records, invoices, and books of accounts for a minimum period of 6 years. The standard monthly sales tax return must be filed electronically on the PRA portal by the 18th day of the subsequent calendar month. The actual sales tax due for a specific tax period must be deposited into the government treasury by the 15th day of the subsequent month. A tax return filed by a registered person who has executed zero taxable or economic transactions during a tax period is null or nil return. If a taxpayer discovers a material error or omission in their field return, they can file a revised return within 120 days without approval, provided extra tax is paid. Revising a return to reduce tax liability or increase an input claim requires the explicit written approval of the jurisdictional commissioner. The specific record keeping rules require separate, dedicated ledgers tracking purchases, sales, inventory, and tax allocations. The PRA holds the legal authority to direct specific categories of registered persons to integrate their billing systems with the PRA electronic real time invoice system. If a taxpayer fails to maintain proper records as mandated by Section 31, the PRA can compute their tax liability using best judgment assessment models. The comprehensive statutory matrix outlining specific offences, penalties, and fine rates is contained within Section 48. The mandatory daily financial penalty levied under Section 49 on any taxpayer who fails to deposit the due tax within the set deadline is the default surcharge. The default surcharge rate is mathematically calculated as CIBOR plus 3% per annum on the unpaid principal tax amount calculated daily. If a person fails to comply for mandatory registration within the statutory time frame, they face a penalty of Rs 5,000 or 5% of the tax due, whichever is higher. Failing to file a monthly sales tax return by the due date attracts a minimum non-compliance penalty of Rs 5,000. Deliberately destroying transactions records or refusing to provide books of accounts during an audit triggers a penalty of Rs 25,000. The serious offence of knowingly making a false statement, falsifying invoices, or executing fake transactions to evade tax is legally defined as tax fraud. A person found guilty of committing tax fraud faces a severe penalty of Rs 100,000 or twice the amount of tax evaded, whichever is higher. In addition to financial penalties, an individual convicted of intentional tax fraud can face imprisonment for a term up to 5 years. If a corporate entity commits an offence under this Act, every director, partner, or principal officer can be held personally liable unless they prove ignorance. The statutory section that empowers authorized PRA officers to conduct a comprehensive tax audit of a registered person's business is Section 33. A specialized tax audit can be initiated based on a definite risk parameters, random sampling selections, or a specific directive issued by the PRA board. An officer executing an audit under Section 33 has the legal right to free, unrestricted access to the business premises, electronic databases, and records. The statutory section that grants power to stop, enter, search premises, and seize non compliant records to prevent tax evasion is Section 35. To execute a forced entry and search of a business premise under Section 35, the officer must obtain a formal search warrant from a magistrate. An enforcement officer can search a business premise without a prior warrant only if there is immediate danger of record destruction or evidence removal. If an officer discovers fake invoices or dual parallel booking ledgers during a raid, they can legally execute a seizure of records. The legal process of cross-checking a tax buyer's return against external banking data, federal customs databases, and third-party records is a forensic tax audit. The PRA holds the legal authority to postpone or freeze a bank account of a defaulting taxpayer to recover established tax arrears. The statutory process where an authorized PRA officer officially calculates and demands short paid or evaded tax via formal order is assessment of tax. Before passing an assessment or penalty order under Section 30, the officer must issue a mandatory show cause notice to the taxpayer. A show cause notice must explicitly detail the legal grounds, allegations, and provide the taxpayer a minimum response timeline of 14 days. The total statutory time frame within which a PRA officer must pass a final adjudication order after issuing a show cause notice is 120 days. The 120-day adjudication timeline can be extended by the competent commissioner for a maximum additional period of 60 days. If an adjudication case is not finalized within the total extended statutory timeline, the show cause notice legally becomes void and stands expired. The specific statutory section that outlines the diverse legal methods available to recover outstanding tax arrears is Section 60. Under Section 60, the PRA can recover tax by deducting amounts from any money owed to the taxpayer by customs, income tax, or provincial departments. The PRA can legally recover outstanding tax arrears by issuing a binding notice to the taxpayer's commercial bank to attach and clean out the bank account. If liquid assets are unavailable, the PRA holds the legal power to seal the business premises or arrest and detain the defaulter in prison for up to 6 months. If a taxpayer is aggrieved by an assessment order passed by an enforcement officer, their first forum of appeal is the Commissioner Appeals. A formal appeal before the Commissioner Appeals under Section 63 must be filed within 30 days of the date the assessment order was served. To file a valid appeal before the Commissioner Appeals, the taxpayer must deposit a mandatory 25% of the admitted tax liability. The Commissioner Appeals is legally bound to pass a final appellate decision within a statutory time frame of 120 days from the filing date. If a taxpayer or the PRA department is aggrieved by the decision of the Commissioner Appeals, the next appellate forum is the Appellate Tribunal. The Appellate Tribunal is a highly independent, specialized judicial body consisting of both judicial members and technical members. An appeal before the Independent Appellate Tribunal must be filed within 60 days of receiving the Commissioner Appeals order. On a substantial question of law arising from a tribunal order, an aggrieved party can file a final reference application to the Lahore High Court. A reference application to the Lahore High Court must be submitted within 90 days of the communication of the Appellate Tribunal's order. The alternative out-of-court dispute resolution framework provided within the Act to settle complex deadlocks amicably is the alternative dispute resolution. The supreme administrative body that governs policy, oversees performance, and exercises overall control of the PRA is the PRA Board. The PRA Board consists of a chairman, official members, and is legally constituted under the Punjab Revenue Authority Act 2012. The legal power to draft, publish, and implement specific procedural rules to execute the provisions of this Act rests with the PRA Board with government approval. If a registered person incorrectly collects an amount as sales tax from a consumer, they are legally bound to deposit the full amount into the government treasury. Retaining tax amounts collected from consumers without depositing them constitutes the serious criminal offense of misappropriation of public funds. If a tax collection target or jurisdiction dispute arises between the PRA and Federal Board of Revenue, it is resolved via MOU or joint committee. The legal doctrine that protects PRA officials from lawsuits or criminal prosecution for actions executed in good faith during enforcement duties is indemnity. Service withholding tax rules mandate that certain corporate buyers must withhold a defined percentage of sales tax at source from the provider's invoice. The ultimate legal operational goal of an enforcement officer executing duties under the Punjab Sales Tax Act is to maximize revenue compliance while checking tax evasion. 100 अकाउंटिंग के MCQs, इनको रिवाइज कर लेते हैं. फर्स्ट MCQs है द अकाउंटिंग कॉन्सेप्ट दैट रिक्वायर्स अ बिजनेस टू बी ट्रीटेड as separate and distinct from its owners is the business entity concept. Second है anticipating no profits but providing for all possible losses reflects the prudence conservatism concept. The assumption that a business entity will continue to operate indefinitely into the future is the going concern concept. Recording transactions in terms of money represents the money measurement concept. The principle stating that revenue is recognized when earned and expenses when incurred, regardless of cash flow, is the accrual concept. Quantifying non-financial assets like employee morale or management credibility is prohibited by money measurement concept. The practice of using the same accounting methods across different financial periods is governed by the consistency principle. Omitting minor pennies or rounding off financial figures to the nearest thousand is justified by the materiality concept. Recording assets at their original purchase price rather than current market value is dictated by the historical cost principle. The accounting equation assets is equal to liabilities plus owner's equity is the foundational basis for dual aspect concept. The primary accounting document used to record financial transactions in chronological order for the first time is the journal. The structural process of transferring journal entries into their respective T accounts is called posting. The accounting book that contains a classified ledger summary of all individual financial accounts is the general ledger. A listing of all ledger account balances designed to check the mathematical accuracy of double entry records is the trial balance. An error where a transaction is completely omitted from the journal books is classified as error of omission. Debit balance accounts that are temporarily kept open to record unexplained trial balance discrepancies are placed in a suspense account. Recording a machinery purchase in the routine repairs expense account is an error of principle. Entering an exact transaction incorrectly on both the debit and credit sides simultaneously creates a compensating error. Journal entries passed at the end of an accounting period to align revenues and expenses with the accrual basis are adjusting entries. Accounts whose balances are closed and reset to zero at the end of each financial year are called nominal or temporary accounts. The dynamic financial statement that evaluates an entity's comprehensive financial performance over a defined timeline is the income statement. The structural financial statement providing a snapshot of assets, liabilities, and equity at a specific point in time is the balance sheet. Raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods are classified structural subcomponents of inventory. Expenses that have been paid in advance but not yet consumed by business operations are recognized as current assets. Income earned by a business entity but not yet collected in cash form is recognized as an accrued asset. Goods or services sold on credit create an operational short term asset called accounts receivable. The financial allowance created to account for anticipated non recovery from credit customers is the allowance for doubtful accounts. When an account receivable is determined to be completely uncollectible, it is written off by debiting allowance for doubtful accounts. Net sales revenue minus the cost of goods sold yields the operational metric known as gross profit. Retained earnings represent cumulative net income that has been kept within the firm rather than distributed as dividends. Expenditure incurred to acquire, improve, or extend the useful life of a long term fixed asset is capital expenditure. Day to day operational expenses incurred to maintain an asset's standard working capacity are revenue expenditures. Legal fee paid to secure the formal title and ownership deed of a newly purchased piece of land are capital expenditure. The cost of replacing a broken window pane on an existing warehouse building is a revenue expenditure. Wages paid directly to factory workers for installing a new production assembly line must be capitalized to the machinery account. If a revenue expenditure is incorrectly recorded as a capital expenditure, the current year's profit will be overstated. Heavy initial market expenses incurred to launch a brand new corporate product line are classified as deferred revenue expenditure. Overhauling a second hand delivery truck immediately after purchase to make it roadworthy is a capital expenditure. Painting a factory building 3 years after its initial construction is classified as a revenue expenditure. Freight charges paid to transport a new commercial printing press to the company's workshop are capital expenditures. The systematic allocation of the depreciable amount of a tangible asset over its useful economic life is depreciation. The depreciation method that charges a uniform, constant dollar amount every year throughout the asset's life is the straight line method. The depreciation method that applies a fixed percentage to the declining book value of an asset is the reducing balance method. The type of depreciation method that accelerates expense recognition in the early years of an asset's life is the declining balance method. The systematic write down of the cost of intangible assets like patents, copyrights, and software is termed amortization. The structural reduction in the physical quantity of natural resources like oil wells, timberlands, or coal mines is called depletion. The total cost of a fixed asset minus its accumulated depreciation yields its financial value known as book value or net book value. Under the reducing balance method, an asset's annual depreciation expense decreases over time while its accumulated depreciation increases. The estimated monetary value a company expects to obtain from disposing of an asset at the end of its useful life is salvage or residual value. When a fixed asset is sold for an amount higher than its net book value, the transaction generates a gain on disposal. The inventory system that continuously updates inventory ledger quantities and values after every purchase and sale is perpetual inventory system. The inventory system that determines physical ending inventory quantities solely via a periodic manual account at year end is the periodic inventory system. The inventory valuation method, assuming that the oldest goods purchased are the first ones sold, is FIFO, first in, first out. The inventory valuation method, assuming that the most recently purchased items are sold first, in LIFO, last in, first out. In a period of steadily rising prices, the inventory method that results in the highest ending inventory valuation on the balance sheet is FIFO. In an inflationary environment, the inventory method that results in the highest cost of goods sold and lower net income is LIFO. Under Standard Accounting Framework IAS 2, inventory must be measured at the lower of its historical cost and its net realizable value. Net realizable value is mathematically defined as the estimated selling price minus the estimated cost of completion and disposal. If ending inventory is accidentally overstated at the end of the current financial year, the current year's net income will be overstated. Overstating the current year's ending inventory causes the subsequent year's cost of goods sold to be overstated. The maximum amount of share capital that a corporate entity is legally authorized to issue to investors is authorized capital. The portion of authorized capital that has been formally offered for subscription to the general investing public is issued capital. Shares issued by a corporation to its existing shareholders free of cost on a pro rata basis are called bonus shares. Offering existing shareholders the first option to buy new shares of a company at a discount prior to public launch is a rights issue. The nominal or face value assigned to an individual unit of stock as printed on the share certificate is its par value. When a company buys back its own previously issued shares from the stock market, the repurchased shares are called treasury shares. The portion of called up capital that shareholders have failed to pay by the designated deadline is termed as call in arrears. If a shareholder consistently defaults on payment calls, the corporate board can seize the shares through forfeiture. Upon the successful forfeiture of corporate shares, the balance previously paid by the defaulting shareholder is transferred to the share forfeiture account. Dividends that are declared and distributed to shareholders midway through a financial year before final annual accounts are closed are interim dividends. A temporary timing difference caused when a business issues a check that has not yet been presented to bank for payment is an unpresented check. Checks deposited into the bank account by a business but not yet cleared or credited by the bank's clearing house are uncredited deposits. A check that is returned by the bank because the issuer's account lacks sufficient clearing funds is labeled as NSF, non-sufficient funds check. Bank charges deducted directly by the commercial bank from an entity's account appear on the bank statement as a debit entry. Interest directly credited to a company's account by the bank appears on the official bank statement format as a credit entry. To reconcile a bank balance starting from the cash book balance, unpresented checks must be added. To reconcile bank balance starting from the cash book balance, uncredited deposits must be deducted. A specialized petty cash tracking framework where the petty cashier is given a fixed advance sum that is replenished periodically is the impressed system. The basic internal control mechanism that ensures no single employee handles all phases of a financial transaction is segregation of duties. Errors made by the bank inside the official bank statement must be adjusted on the bank statement side of the reconciliation. The short-term liquidity ratio calculated by dividing total current assets by total current liabilities is the current ratio. The profitability ratio that evaluates how efficiently management uses equity capital to generate net earnings is return on equity. The financial leverage ratio that measures the proportion of a company's structural financing derived from debt versus equity is debt to equity ratio. The activity ratio that evaluates how many times a business sells and replaces its stock of goods over a time is the inventory turnover ratio. A high accounts receivable turnover ratio indicates that a business entity collects its credit debts efficiently. The operational metric calculated by dividing net credit sales by average accounts receivable balance is the receivable turnover ratio. Gross profit divided by net sales revenue expressed as a percentage value yields the gross profit margin. The ratio measuring a company's structural capacity to meet its long-term interest payment obligations on debt is the time interest earned ratio. The continuous comparative analysis of financial statement items across multiple consecutive years is called horizontal analysis. The specific international accounting standard that establishes the baseline requirements for the presentation of financial statements is IAS 1. The standard that regulates the accounting treatment, recognition thresholds, and depreciation models for property, plant, and equipment is IAS 16. The international standard that provides a single, comprehensive framework for recognizing revenue from contracts with customers is IFRS 15. The accounting treatment, measurement criteria, and disclosures required for commercial leases are governed by IFRS 16. Under international rules, research expenditures incurred during the initial phase of an internal project must be expensed immediately. Development expenditures incurred during an internal project can be capitalized as an intangible asset only if they meet the strict criteria of IAS 38. Accounting profit calculated under accounting standards differs from taxable profit calculated under tax laws due to temporary and permanent differences. Taxable temporary differences between the carrying amount of an asset and its tax base give rise to a deferred tax liability. Deductible temporary differences between the book value of an asset and its tax base give rise to a deferred tax asset. The qualitative financial reporting characteristic that ensures information is complete, neutral, and free from material error is faithful representation.